Hello and welcome to PKFM. My name is Emmanuel Kwesi Meisa, and welcome to the Personality Disorder Strain. Last week we ended with the Temperament podcast, and I promised you that this week we're going to start with the Personality Disorders podcast or train. So that's what we're on today, and welcome. If this is the first time you're listening to me, you're welcome. If you are an ardent listener, you're also welcome. It's a beautiful Friday. We are done with the Temperament podcast, and I know that so many of us learned a lot. I learned a lot. I know you also learned a lot from that. And if you haven't gotten the chance to listen, I'll give you the site or the link to the Temperament podcast so that you go listen to it and we all get educated. And so we can live or be able to live peaceably with our partners or loved ones and friends and all that. We're looking at the personality disorders from this week going. It'll be a 2 or 3 weeks journey, and it starts today. And so we're going to look at what they are, the overview of personality disorders. We're going to look at the causes of it. We're going to look at the risk factors. We're going to look at the complications. And lastly, we're going to look at the clusters that we have. We have a lot of types, a lot of them out there. We use so many of them in our conversations, especially between men and women. Narcissistic, borderline, but the pervasive one, or the one that's much popular, is the narcissist personality disorder. We're going to delve deep into it later on to see who they are and how they manifest themselves. And perhaps at the end of the education, our knowledge or thoughts towards these people or towards this cluster of personality disorders would change, because this is a disorder. No one chose or chooses to be this. The environment and the genes are the playing factors or the combining factors to making someone get to that point of being a narcissist. And so, without wasting your time, let's launch straight into it. The overview of personality disorders. A personality disorder is a type of mental disorder in which you have a rigid and unhealthy pattern of thinking, functioning, and behaving. A person with a personality disorder has trouble perceiving and relating to situations and people. This causes significant problems and limitations in relationships, social activities, work, and school. So this is what personality disorder or personality disorders are. They are a type of mental disorders in which you have a rigid and unhealthy pattern of thinking, functioning, and behaving. A person with a personality disorder has trouble perceiving and relating to situations and people. This causes significant problems and limitations in relationships, social activities, and work and school. So this is who they are, this is what it is. In some cases, you may realize that you have a personality disorder because your way of thinking and behaving seems natural to you, and you may blame others for the challenges you face. You know, personality disorders usually begin in the teenage years or early adulthood. And there are many types of them, a lot of types. Some types may become less obvious throughout middle age, and we talk about them every day. We see them, how we relate with people, and we label them as being off, as being not welcoming and all that. But least did we know that they are suffering from personality disorders. And the causes of them, or what causes personality disorders. Personality is the combination of thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that makes you unique. So that's your personality. The combination of your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and it makes you unique. It's the way you view, understand, and relate to the outside world, as well as how you see yourself. Personality forms during childhood and is shaped through an interaction of your genes. So certain personality traits may be passed on to you by your parents through inherited genes. These traits are sometimes called your temperament. So it may be passed on from your great grandmother, your great great grandparent to your grandparent to your parent and to you. And also the environment. This involves the surroundings you grew up in, events that occurred, and relationships with family members and others. So if someone grew up in a family where the mom or the dad was always abusive, or the mom was always insulting and all of that, it plays a role, and perhaps it's in the genes. The father's father, that's your grandfather, may have been beating your grandmother, or your grandmom, your mother's side, may have been insulted, and so it's been passed on to your mom. And once you come to this kind of environment, to see your father abusive, your mom insulted, since we say that it's been passed on from childhood, the likelihood of you picking it up is very high. Personality disorders are thought to be caused by a combination of these genetic and environmental influences. Your genes may make you vulnerable to developing a personality disorder, and a life situation may trigger the actual development. And so if you have a gene that makes you vulnerable to being a narcissist or being a borderline personality disorder, and the environment you come and find yourself in is welcoming enough to develop that kind of disorder, definitely you're going to go that way. But let's look at the risk factors. Although the precise cause of personality disorders is not known, and as much as we've spoken about the environment and the genes, the precise cause is not known. Certain factors may seem to increase the risk of developing or triggering personality disorders, which include the family history of personality disorders or mental illness. If the family has a history of personality disorders or mental illness, definitely you may have a trait in there. Abusive, unstable, or chaotic family life during childhood. As soon as you're born into this family, all that you saw every day was your mom and dad fighting, insulting themselves, cursing themselves. Definitely that character, that behavior, that disorder, that lifestyle is going to be formed. Being diagnosed with childhood conduct disorder. People as young as 2, 3, 4, they may be diagnosed with attention hyperactive disorder, DIDN, and once you are being diagnosed with that during the childhood, then it means there's a history or there's a trace from your former to your latter, and also the variations in brain chemistry and structure. Everything stems from the brain, and so it's just like that. Sometimes it happens that once you're born, there may be variations in your brain chemistry and structure, and so some of these things may be trait or maybe genetic, and once we have the history of it in your family, one can't run away from them. And let's look at the complications. Personality disorders can significantly disrupt the lives of both the affected person and those who care about the person. They may cause problems with relationships, work, or school, and can lead to social isolation or alcohol or drug abuse. So this is what it does. Once people who are suffering from these disorders that we're talking about can go that line. And so these are the complications. We are going to look at the clusters that we have. The next week, we're going to take each cluster and we're going to list or explore some of the types under the clusters. So the first cluster, the cluster A, personality disorders. The cluster A are characterized by odd, eccentric thinking or behavior. The cluster A. They are characterized by odd, eccentric thinking or behavior. And they include the paranoid personality disorder, the schizoid personality disorder, and the schizotypal personality disorder. These three are what you can find under the cluster A. Now let's come to cluster B. The cluster B personality disorders are characterized by dramatic, overly emotional, or unpredictable thinking or behavior. They are characterized by dramatic, overly emotional, or unpredictable thinking or behavior. They may include the antisocial personality disorder, the borderline personality disorder, the histrionic personality disorder, and the narcissistic personality disorder. They are almighty. So this cluster is characterized by, or are characterized by dramatic, overly emotional, unpredictable thinking or behavior. We shouldn't forget they are personality disorders, not what one chose to be. The last one, the cluster C, the cluster C personality disorders are characterized by anxious and fearful thinking or behavior. So they may include the avoidant personality disorder, the dependent personality disorder, and obsessive compulsive personality disorder. So these are the things that characterize, or these are the types that we can find under the cluster C. And as you said, theirs are characterized by anxious and fearful thinking or behavior, avoidant, dependent, and obsessive compulsive behavior. These are what we are going to look at in the coming days. And so whenever you see someone exhibit one behavior or the other, please let's take our time and really examine the person or those people before we can conclude. We easily label people. We easily conclude that people, is he not a narcissist? That's what we know. We have other types of them, and even for that, we forget that it's a personality disorder. It's a mental problem that needs attention. That needs solving. That needs intervention. And so we shouldn't always be on the heels of people, trying to label them, trying to call them names, but let's exercise some patience and probe further and know the actual thing going on with such persons or such people. Once we know all these things, we'll be in a better position to relate with people and to know when to go away from those people or to come close to them. And so from next week, we're going to take the clusters, or we're going to take them cluster by cluster to explain how they are, how they manifest themselves. And at the end of the day, I know that you and I would have learned something or would learn something, so that we'll be able to relate properly with people. The goal is to relate properly with people. The goal is to get close to people and not judge them, and to understand them. If you want to be understood, you have to understand someone else. But these things are very prudent and important that we know, so that we can be able to understand people and relate better with them. And so next week, make a date with me on PK Radio. I'm wishing you a great weekend ahead. Be good, be great. God bless you. Thank you.